All my dear class 6 student, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Now you have a new video. In this video, now we are going to learn English Supplementary Reader lesson number 4, The Old Clock Song. Say the name of the lesson, The Old Clock Song. Say before you start reading the story, let's see some few points of the first part of the story. The story has been divided into two parts. So first part and second part. So before reading the first part, let's see some points related with the first part. It is Christmas Eve and closing time for shops. Then the second point, Ray's old clock shop is still open. The two shoppers call at this late hour. Say the story took place say on the Christmas Eve. Say normally we the people on earth celebrated Christmas on 25th December every year. Say Christmas Eve means just a day before Christmas. So Christmas Eve means 24th December. So this story took place. The incident happened just a day before Christmas. So it is Christmas Eve and closing time for shop. Then it is the time to close all the shops. Ray's old clock shop is still open. Then in this first part of the story, you will find a man whose name is Ray. Say he is the owner of the old clock shop. Say his clock. Say his shop is still open at that late hour at night. Two shoppers call at this late hour. Then, while he still open his shop at the last minute before closing his shop, two shoppers will come inside his shop. Say one shopper, the elderly one, will enter into his shop. Then the another shopper, the younger one, will remain at the door. Actually, the two shoppers were not the ordinary shopper. Say they are coming to Mr. Ray's shop to steal or to rob something from his shop, from Ray's shop. Say in this first part you will find that the owner of the old clock shop, Mr. Ray, was a deaf person. Deaf means a person who cannot hear any sound or any kind of voice. So now let's read the story, The Old Clock Shop. Christmas Eve had arrived. As last minute shoppers were going home, a thick white sheet of snow lay over Salt Lake City, USA. Yet the lights were still burning in the old clock shop. As Ray, its old deaf owner, worked on a clock he had sold that day. Listen carefully. I will explain this paragraph. Say, it was Christmas evening, and it was the time to close shop at Salt Lake City in USA. But lights in Ray's shop were on because he was repairing a clock that he had sold. Ray, the owner of the shop, was old and dead. Say, in this first paragraph, say, as you know, Ray was the owner of the old clock shop. He was deaf. That means a person who cannot hear any sound or any voice. That is deaf. So on the Christmas Eve, say, his shop was still open at the late hour of the night. He was repairing a clock that he had sold at that time. Next, let's see next paragraph. Having finished his work, Ray stood up and was on his way to the back room when a cold rush of air from the front door hit the back of his neck. Say, after finishing his work, when Ray got up, a cold wave of air touched his neck from the front door. Then, next paragraph. He turned to meet a last minute chauffeur, but his old wise eyes told him that this was not a chauffeur. He saw two men, one in his 20s, the other closer to 50. Say at this time, when he turned to see the chauffeur, say, who came to his shop at the last minute. But as a wise and experienced person, say, Ray noticed that they were not shoppers. Say, he saw two men. Say, one was young and the other was middle age. Say, the younger one is about 20 years of age, then the older is about 50 or nearly 50 years of age. The younger man remained at the door. That means the younger man stopped at the door. The older man approached the counter with no sign of friendliness in his eyes, and the middle-aged came to the counter. His eyes were reflecting the cruelty of his heart. Ray was able to hide his growing fear as he slowly pushed a notepad and a pencil across the counter. So at this time, say, Mr. Ray, the owner of the old clock shop, say, somehow, wisely, he hid his fear and slowly pushed a notepad and a pencil towards the older man. Look at the next paragraph. He smiled at the unfriendly face, then pointed to his ears. and shook his head from side to side. Then at this time, say a quick look of surprise sensed the man's face as he studied the notepad, then turned and said something to his friend. Say, look at the look at this paragraph. Say explanation. Say the information on the notepad brought a change on the man's face. Say something information is written there in the notepad. So by seeing the information on the notepad, say it brought a little change on the man's face, the older man's face. He smiled and then, with his gazer pointing to his ears and shaking his head from side to side, from side to side to another, told the other man that he was deaf. Say the older man told to the younger man that the owner of the shop, old clock shop, was a deaf person. So a deaf person means a person who cannot hear any kind of sound. Now the older man came to know that Mr. Ray, the owner of the old clock shop, was a deaf person. Then, next paragraph. Ray used the chance to look closely at the man, paying attention to the shape of a gun in a restless hand in the man's right coat pocket. Now, at this time, Ray sometime to look. Say this gave Ray some time, say, to look and examine the man closely. Say he observed the shapes of the gun and his hand movement in his coat's right pocket. Say at this time, say while the older man writing something on the notepad, Ray got a chance to look and examine the man closely, and Ray observed the shape of the gun and the older man's hand movement in his coat's right pocket. Anger boiled within him, but it was kept down by an inner voice that said, "Be still." Say they was feeling angry, say inside his heart, but his wisdom asked him to cool down and be still. So at this time, Ray, the owner of the old clock shop, was feeling angry, say inside his heart, but his wisdom asked him to cool down and to be still for some time. He wrote on the notepad, "May I help you?" Say he asked the man writing on notepad if he could help him. Then at this time, by taking the chance, Mr. Ray asked the older man if he could help him. For the first time, the older man looked directly at Ray and smiled. Say, with this, the man looked straight at Ray and smiled. Say, for the first time, the older man looked directly at Ray and smiled. Say, while hearing Ray's polite request, the older man, say, for the first time, looked directly to Ray and gave a smile, a cruel, mocking smile. They both understood why he was there, why his friend remained at the door. Say, it was a cruel smile, as if mocking fun of something. Say, this time, the owner of the old clock shop, Mr. Ray, came to know that the smile was a cruel one, not an ordinary smile. They both understood why he was there, why his friend remained at the door. Then they understood the reason for their being in the shop and of the one man standing outside at the door. They looked like men who were down on their luck and were now ready to try something they would later be sorry about. Ray was looking at them as unlucky people who were trying something for which they could repent later. So this is up to the first part of the story. Now let's see the second part of the story. So before we start reading the second part, let's look at some few points related with the second part of the story, say, or you can say the last part of the story having only two parts, first part and second part. So let's see the point. Ray knows that his visitors are in need. He accepts an old watch in exchange for a good sum of money. The message of peace and goodwill spread everywhere as the old clock chimed Merry Christmas. Say, in this second part of the story, say, Ray knows that his visitors are in need. Say, visitor, here it means the last minute shoppers, the two last minute shopper. Say, the young man and the older man. Say, at this time, say, Ray know that his visitor were in need. He accepts an old watch in exchange for a good sum of money. Then, in this part of the last part of the story, they will accept an old watch in exchange for a good sum of money with the older man. The message of peace and goodwill spread everywhere as the old clock chimed Merry Christmas. Then, from that old watch, say, the clock will chime Merry Christmas, and it will spread a message of peace and goodwill everywhere. So now, let's start reading the second part of the story. The clock ticked on. Ray calmly wrote another message. Have you come to pick up a clock or what? Then he pointed to the lawn board filled with hanging clock. Say, at this time, say, Ray knew at his heart that his visitors were in need of money. Say Ray quietly asks, say writing a message, if they had come to take a clock or a watch. Then he pointed to the lawn board filled with hanging clock and pocket watches. He was not a pawnbroker, but at the same time could not say no to the needy people who placed their old watches or clocks before him for anything they could get. Say understanding their need. Say Ray also pointed to the lawn board filled with hanging clocks and pocket watches to tell them that he gave money as loan in exchange for people's old watches and clock. He loaned more than he should. They would be there when the owner wanted them back at the same price he had paid with no interest. Then further, Mr. Ray said to the older man that he was not a man who gave money to people to take some security in return or earn interest. Rather, Ray did all that to help needy people. It was because of his helping and kind nature. Then the older man seemed to feel a little easier, took out his hand from his pocket and quickly looked at the watch on his wrist. How much will you give me for this? The man wrote. This made the older man feel easy. He looked at his watch on his wrist and asked to Mr. Ray what price he could offer him for that wristwatch. Ray noticed a little shame in the gray eyes looking at him. The watch was nothing special and yet had great powers. It was something to exchange a way out of a bad situation. So at this time, Ray felt that the man was a little ashamed. The watch was not of a great worth, but it was special because with this, Ray could turn around a bad situation and come out of it safely. Knowing that great need had brought the man to his shop in the first place, Ray asked, how much do you need for it? The reply came back on the notepad, whatever it's worth. Understanding that man's need and helplessness because of which he was into such a bad act, Ray asked him what was his need. Then at this time, the man replied, after hearing Ray's question, the man replied to Ray, writing on the pad, writing on the notepad that he should pay whatever was the worth of the watch. Say, the older man asks to Ray by writing on the notepad. Say, he should pay whatever was the worth of the watch. Say, the older man asks to Ray to pay whatever was the worth of his watch. Ray reached into his cash box, pulled out a $50 note, and passed it into the man's hand. Say, at this time, say, after hearing the oldest man's word, say, Ray went to his cash box and he took out a $50 note and he handed it to the older man. As they shook hands, Ray looked into the man's eye. They seemed to say, "Thank you." As they shook hands, Ray looked into the man's eye. They seemed to say, "Thank you." So, say after handing over $50 notes to the older man, say they shook hands each other, expressing gratitude. Say Ray looked into the man's eye. They seemed to say thank you. Then at this time, say Ray knows that the older man expressed gratitude towards him. They both knew the watch was not worth that much. Before turning to leave, the man wrote, "I will be back to pick it up as soon as I can. Merry Christmas." Say, both of them knew that the watch was not of that high price. So this time, say both of them knew, say both of them means Mr. Ray and the older man knew that the watch was not of that of high price. Say before leaving, say the man said that he would come back to take his watch as soon as possible and wish to Mr. Ray by saying Merry Christmas. Then the last paragraph. The little story ended on the half hour with the clocks striking all together. The timepieces, which had been looking on silently all the while, rang out the time with such feeling that even Ray thought he could hear them. Say the small story ended on half hour. Say with the clock. Say the small story ended on the half hour with the clocks striking all together. Say they all strike that particular time together, witnessing the whole incident. The little story ended on the half hour with the clocks striking all together. The timepieces, which had been looking on silently all the while, rang out the time with such feeling that even Ray thought he could hear them. Dear, sweet musical message was filled with hope. The timeless message of peace on earth, goodwill towards all was felt by the three men. So by the three men means the young man of about 20 years and the older man and the owner of the old clock shop named Mr. Ray, who stood in the old clock shop. Say last paragraph say the small story say ended on the half hour with the clock striking all together. So at this time all the clocks in the old clock shop say striking all together. They all strike that particular time together, witnessing the whole incident. Say their musical striking bells produce a music which spread a message of hope and peace. Say hope and peace. The music was so sweet and impactful that it seemed as if even deaf ears of Ray were also able to feel it. Say even the deaf Ray was also able to feel it. The sweet and the hope-filled message of goodwill others, towards others, and peace on earth was felt by everyone. Say all three of them say feel the message of goodwill and peace on earth. The message of peace and goodwill spread everywhere as the old clock chimed Merry Christmas. Say the old clock chime say Merry Christmas. So in this way the story ends here. Now let's see questions. Question number 1. What made Ray think the visitor was not really a chauffeur? Answer. He thought so because of his own experience, their arrival at the last hour of time, no friendliness in his eyes, and the way one man stopped outside the door. Then, question number 2. Why do you think he had come to the shop? Answer. He came to rob money from the shopkeeper. Question number 3. How did Ray communicate with them? Answer. Ray was deaf, so he communicated with them through gestures and by writing on the notepad. Then question number 4. What do you think the man said to his friend who waited at the door? Answer. He said to his friend that the shopkeeper was deaf. Question number 5. Ray was not a pawnbroker. Why then did he lend money to people in exchange for their old watches and clocks? Answer. Ray was not a man who took security or earned interest in return of items. He lent money to people to help them. He did so because of his kind nature. Then question number 6. The watch was nothing special and yet had great powers. In what sense did it have great powers? Answer. The was ordinary but was special and great because it had the power to turn a bad situation into a good situation. The man got money without troubling Ray, and Ray escaped from any hurt. In this sense, it had great power. Then, question number 7. Do you think the man will ever come back to pick up the vase? No. Answer: no, I don't think so because he got a much higher price for his vase. Then the last question: when did the unfriendly face of the visitor turn truly friendly? Answer: it turned truly friendly when he received a higher price for his vase. So these are the answer of these questions. Thank you for watching my video. Thank you all.